So I'm going to start on page 451 at line 517. That's where I'm going to start the reading, but I'll start the explanation where we stopped last time on page 452, line 537. Yes. So the last line of the previous section is, "Then shall the world Redeemer's task be done." The fulfillment of everything that the great avatars come into the world to do. So until then, until the world Redeemer's task is done, till then must life carry its seed of death, and sorrow's plaint be heard in the slow night. O mortal, bear this great world's law of pain. In thy hard passage through a suffering world, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength. Turn towards high truth, aspire to love and peace. A little bliss is lent thee from above, a touch divine upon thy human days. Make of thy daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou moves towards God. And then he gives a warning. Haste not towards Godhead on a dangerous road. Open not thy doorways to a nameless power. Climb not to Godhead by the Titan's road. Against the law he pits his single will. Across its way he throws his pride of might. Heavenward he clambers on a stair of storms, aspiring to live near the deathless sun. He strives with a giant strength to wrest by force from life and nature the immortal's right. He takes by storm the world and fate and heaven. So that's where we stopped last time. He comes not to the high world maker's seat. He waits not for the outstretched hand of God to raise him out of his mortality. All he would make his own, leave nothing free, stretching his small self to cope with the infinite. Obstructing the gods' open ways, he makes his own estate of the earth's air and light. A monopolist of the world energy, he dominates the life of common men. His pain and others' pain he makes his means. On death and suffering he builds his throne. In the hurry and clangor of his acts of might, in a riot and excess of fame and shame, by his magnitudes of hate and violence, by the quaking of the world beneath his tread, he matches himself against the eternal's calm and feels in himself the greatness of a God. Power is his image of celestial self. The Titan's heart is a sea of fire and force. He exults in the death of things and ruin and fall. He feeds his strength with his own and others' pain. In the world's pathos and passion, he takes delight. His pride, his might call for the struggle and pang. He glories in the sufferings of the flesh and covers the stigmata with the Stoic's name. His eyes, blinded and visionless, stare at the sun. The seeker's sight, receding from his heart, can find no more the light of eternity. He sees the beyond as an emptiness, void of soul, and takes his night for a dark infinite. His nature magnifies the unreal's blank and sees in naught the sole reality. He would stamp his single figure on the world, obsess the world's rumors with his single name. His moments center the vast universe. He sees his little self as very God. His little eye has swallowed the whole world. His ego has stretched into infinity. So this is the description of the Titan, and Narad is advising us, he's advising all human beings not to be ambitious and to try to seize the kingdom of God by storm. Climb not to Godhead by the Titan's road. So we'll go back to page 452 and line 537. That's where we're going to start our study today. You will start, Suresh?
He turns not to the high world neither say. He wait not for the outstretched hand of God. to raise him out of his mortality.
You can read the next two lines.
All he world made his own, leave nothing free, stretching his small self to cope with the infinity.
With the infinite.
Infinite.
Yeah, thank you. So this he, this is the Titan. And Narad tells us that he is not going to reach the seat of the high world maker, the creator of this world. Because he doesn't wait for God to stretch out his hand and lift him up out of his mortality, his humanity, his death-bound state. He wants to extend his small self, stretch it, this little human form and personality that he has. He wants to stretch it to cope with the infinite, the whole of infinity. He wants to claim everything for himself. He will not leave anything free. So this is the image of the human tyrant, the human being who thinks that he has the right to enslave other human beings and control everything in the way that he thinks is right. And sometimes such beings have received support from the hostile worlds, from the adverse planes, and they have dominated for some time whole masses of humanity, and that has always been a terrible disaster for the people who fall under his control. Bhavana.
Obstructing the God's open ways he made, his owns estate of the earth's air and life. A monopolist of the world energy, he dominates the life of common man.
The gods, the cosmic powers who are furthering the divine's will in the universe, their ways are open. They allow things to move freely. But this Titan, he puts himself in the way, he obstructs, he blocks the open ways of the gods. And he controls, he does his best to control and make his own estate where he can be the ruler. The whole air and light of the earth has this terrible possessiveness and wish to control everything. He wants to monopolize the energy, all the energy, the life energy, all the energy that is there in the world, to monopolize. That means you don't allow anybody else to have access to it. You control it all. No? He dominates the life of common men. So ordinary people are no longer free. They have to live under the domination of that terrible tyrant. Alice.
His pain and others' pain, he makes his means. On death and suffering, he builds his throne.
Yes, thank you. So that's the theme of this canto. It's the problem of pain. So one way that pain comes into the world, it's through this kind of titanic selfishness. And these beings, they exult in pain. He's ready to suffer pain for himself, and he's ready to inflict pain on other people. He makes this his means of domination. He builds his throne, his seat of control on death and suffering. Gumsun.
In the hurry and clamor with his acts of might,
Yes.
been revealed and possessed of pain and shame, by his magnitudes of hate and violence, by the fiction of the world beneath his tread. He matches himself against the eternal storm and feels in himself the greatness of God. Power is his image of celestial self.
Yes. So he wants to show his power, no? His acts of might. And he's in a hurry, and he doesn't mind how much noise he makes. Clangor. Clangor is the noise, a metallic noise, metal on metal. Clangor. A riot. This is when things are out of control, and an excess, just too much, of fame and shame. He wants his name to be on everybody's lips all the time and in everybody's minds and hearts. And shame, I mean, he should be ashamed. He isn't ashamed, but the things that he does are shameful. He indulges in magnitudes. I mean, ordinary people may sometimes feel hatred and they may perform acts of violence, but these are on a small scale and limited. But the Titan indulges in them on a huge scale, magnitudes of hate and violence. And he enjoys to feel the whole world quaking. Of course, we talk about an earthquake, but if there's a very, very powerful foot coming, the room may shake. And we may quake with fear. If he's making the whole world quake with fear because of his power, he feels that he has that power, and he feels himself equal to the calm of the eternal. He feels in himself that he is as great as any god, because power is his image of celestial self. That's how he thinks of God, that God is all-powerful, and I will be as powerful here on earth. You will read, Tamarai?
The Titan of decisive of fair and force. He victors in the threat of things and
Ruin.
and fun. He feeds his throat street with his own and others' pain. In the world's products and passion, he takes delight. His pride, his might call for the
Struggle.
and the
Pang. Yeah. So how can he be like that? It's because of his inner state, the Titan's heart. It's a sea of fire and force. It's full of intensity, burning intensity, and energy. He exults. To exult means to enjoy, to delight in, to rejoice in. He enjoys the death of things. He enjoys it when there's ruin, destruction, when there's fall, when people are not able to live up to their souls, when they do evil and wicked things. And that's what he feeds on. He feeds his own energy, his own strength with his own pain and others' pain. He enjoys, he takes delight in the world's pathos. Pathos, normally we feel very sorry, if something is pathetic, if it's something regrettable and painful, sad, troubling. He just enjoys it, the pathos and the passion, the intensity, and passion can mean suffering also. Intense feelings, particularly intense suffering. He takes delight. His quality is pride. He is proud of himself and his power, his might, his strength. And that pride of his asks for struggle and pain. You like to read? Yes?
He glories in the sufferings of the flesh and covers the stigmata with the stonic snail. His eyes blinded and visionless stare at the sun. The seeker's sight, descending from his heart, can find no more the light of eternity. Shall I proceed?
Next two lines.
He sees the beyond as an
Emptiness.
emptiness void of soul, and takes his not for a dark infinite.
Yes. So he glories in the sufferings of the flesh, He might have to perform all kinds of terrible austerities, but that feeds his pride, that I can bear so much. And then there's this line, he covers the stigmata with the Stoics' name. Two different references there in this line. Stigmata, in a Christian context, these are the signs of Christ's suffering. That the marks left in Christ's hands and feet and his side, these are a stigmata means a wound. Yeah. And in the spiritual history, there have been mystics who have felt their oneness with the suffering Christ, and even stigmata have appeared on their bodies through that experience. But he is not like the suffering Christ. He's not doing this for the sake of humanity. He's doing this only for the sake of his own greatness. He's covering that suffering, those wounds, with the name of the Stoic. The Stoics were a school of Greek philosophers who advised that the way to becoming truly human, it was to learn to endure suffering. Not that they sought it, but physical and psychological suffering. They felt that the human way to deal with that is to remain nobly silent and to learn to endure and be patient. There's also a kind of tapasya which consists of keeping the eyes fixed on the sun all through the day. You might have heard of this, no? And in this way, of course, the ascetic may lose his sight. If the sun is too strong, he may lose his power of vision. So he's staring at this sun of power that he wants, and his eyes become blind. He loses all power of vision, of deeper understanding, of knowledge. No? And that sight, that power of vision that we all have deep in the heart, the power of vision of the seeker, the psychic sight, this withdraws. Mother has been asked what happens to the psychic being of people who are like this. Precisely this question somebody asked her, and she said it just withdraws, it goes away, because it sees it can't do anything with this being. So the seeker's sight receding, withdrawing from the heart. It feels lost, it can't find the light of eternity anymore. That Titan sees the beyond as an emptiness. There's no souls. He doesn't have to think about the consequences of what he's doing. No? He takes his own darkness for the darkness, for a dark infinite. He thinks that's how everything is. That darkness that is within him, that fills the whole universe, or even beyond. You like to read, ma'am?
Nature magnifies the unreal blank, and sees in naught the sole reality. He would stamp his single finger on the world, obsess the world rumors with his single name.
Thank you. So because of the way that his nature is, that it's such a dark and self-centered nature, no? He magnifies in his perceptions the unreality of things. He thinks that this nothingness, this blankness, is really the only reality. And he wants to stamp his mark in the world, in the human world. He wants everybody in the world to be talking only about him, to obsess the world's rumors with his single name, as if everybody must think and speak only about him. Obsession is when we are all thinking about only one thing. No? So we have to think about him, the Titan, whatever his name is. Joel.
His movements center the vast universe. He sees his little self as very God. His little I has swallowed the whole world. His ego has stretched into infinity.
Yes. So that's how he perceives himself. That his moments, whatever little experience he has, that's the center of the whole vast universe. And he magnifies the importance of himself. I am God. No. His little I has swallowed up the whole world. His ego has stretched into infinity. It's boundless. This is the characteristic of the Titan, and it's just the very, very opposite of that of the world Redeemer, who also says, I am God. And he hears the echo of the world saying, yes, all is God. Everything is God. It's just the very opposite. Will you read?
His mind a bit in original darkness. Ciphers
Ciphers.
his thought on a slate of hourless time. He builds on a mighty vacancy of soul, a huge philosophy of nothingness.
Thank you. So he has a mind, but it's not really a very significant mind. It's just a beat, single beat of time in original nothingness. These thoughts of his are like a cipher, a big zero drawn on a slate. Children have a slate in the primary school, where they learn to write, and you can easily wipe off whatever is written on a slate. So that's what it's like. He's just drawing a big zero on this slate of time that doesn't have any particular duration. He's building on a mighty vacancy of soul, because his soul is empty or missing, a huge philosophy of nothingness. There are these philosophies, that say that all this is an illusion. And if you really believe that all this is an illusion, then maybe you can feel like the Titan, that you will create the illusion that suits you, that you like, that you want. Lela.
In him, Nirvana lives and speaks and acts, impossibly creating the universe. An eternal zero is his formless self, his spirit, the void, impersonal essence.
Yeah. Perhaps this is the way he sees himself, That if everything is unreal, he's just expressing that. But he wants to create his own universe. His self, formless self, is empty. His spirit is also empty, the void, impersonal, absolute. In philosophy, such concepts are there, but they can't be the foundation of a real universe. They can only be the foundation of an illusion. Ganga Lakshmi.
Take not to strike the whole soul of man. Cast not thyself into that night of God. The soul suffering is not become his key, or ransom by soul events demand on life.
This is what Narad warns us. He says, don't take that way. Don't make your ego the driver of your quest. You are a human being. You are a growing soul in the human form. Don't throw yourself into that darkness, into that night of God. Suffering, seeking suffering for its own sake or to gain power over other people, that's not the key that will open eternity to you. And heaven is not asking you to ransom yourself by sorrow. Mother has spoken about this also. She says, in a particular context in the 1950s, she said there's so much goodwill in Christianity, for example, but there's this figure of Christ on the cross, and the teaching is that we have to be ransomed, we have to be saved by sorrow and suffering. But she says that's not true. That's not what heaven is asking of us. That's not what the higher levels of consciousness are asking for us, from us. They're asking that we live in the highest and best way that we possibly can. So this here it's just put in two words. The soul suffering is not eternity's key, or ransomed by sorrow, heaven's demand on life. That's not what we need to do in order to reach a higher level. No? Mihong.
O mortal bear, but ask enough for the stroke. Too soon will grief and anguish find thee out. Venomous is that venture for thy will. Only in limit can man's strength be safe. Yet is infinity thy speed's goal. Its bliss is there behind the world's face of tears.
Yes. So that is his advice to Savitri's mother, who is feeling so unhappy about this tragedy that she has to face. He says, you're a human being. Bear, endure. But don't ask for the stroke. Don't cling to suffering and ask for more suffering. There's enough suffering in the world. Too soon will grief and anguish find thee out. You will have enough to suffer. And seeking for suffering, that is too much for you to do. Too enormous is that venture for thy will. Human beings are not titans, and human strength can only be safe within certain limits. That's how it is now when we are growing souls. No? But then he tells her, but infinity is the goal, it's the aim towards which your spirit is moving. And the bliss of the spirit is there behind the world's face of tears. However terrible and painful the world looks, behind it, that one can come in contact with that bliss of the spirit. Let's go on. Martin.
The power is in thee that thou knowest not. Thou art a vessel of the imprisoned spark. It seeks relief from time's envelopment, and while thou shutst it in, the seal is pain.
Go on.
Bliss is the Godhead strong, eternal, free, unburdened by life's blind mystery of pain. Pain is the signature of the ignorant, attesting the secret God denied by life. Until life finds him, pain can never end.
Yes. So in each of us, there's a power that we are not aware of. Each of us is a vessel, a container for the spark of divinity that is imprisoned in our material form. That spark wants to escape. It seeks relief from this envelopment of time, being imprisoned in time. And as long as you keep it shut in, the seal is pain. You will have suffering. But bliss is the crown, is the fulfillment of divinity that is eternal and free, and it isn't burdened by this movement of life, this blind mystery of pain that we experience here. This pain that you feel is a signature, a sign of the ignorance. But it's the sign that witnesses, it attests that there's a secret God within that is denied by life, that life is not paying attention to. Until life finds that secret God, pain can never end. We will go on feeling suffering until we found that secret power of divinity, that imprisoned spark within ourselves. So until we've done that, what Narad advises is to bear. Dhanalakshmi.
Calm is self's victory, overcoming fate. There thou shalt find at last thy road to bliss. Bliss is the secret stuff of all that
lives.
Even pain and grief are garbs of worldly delight. It hides behind thy sorrow and thy cry.
Such wonderful lines, no? Bear. First of all, be calm. Calm. We read about it yesterday in the Life Divine, that what the mind can do for us is to help us to keep some calm and some balance. Calm is the victory over ourself, no? And that calm can overcome fate. And if we can bear the sufferings in our life, he promises us that we shall find at last our road to bliss. Because bliss, Ananda, is the secret stuff of everything that lives, of everything that is. And even pain and grief are coverings of world delight. They are dresses and clothes and disguises that the world delight puts on itself. Bliss is hiding behind thy sorrow and thy cry. I want to read to the end. Shall I do that? At the end of the section. So it's very beautiful and important what he says. Because thy strength is a part and not God's whole. Because afflicted by the little self, thy consciousness forgets to be divine as it walks in the vague penumbra of the flesh and cannot bear the world's tremendous touch, thou criest out and sayest that there is pain. Indifference, pain and joy, a triple disguise, attire of the rapturous dancer in the ways, withhold from thee the body of God's bliss. Thy spirit's strength shall make thee one with God. Thy agony shall change to ecstasy. Indifference deepen into infinity's calm, and joy laugh nude on the peaks of the Absolute. This is the whole mystery of human pain. Because our strength is apart, because we are limited beings, none of us is God's whole. And within us is a true consciousness but it's afflicted with that little self, with this limitation of our consciousness in the human state. So it forgets to be divine, it forgets its divinity as it walks in the penumbra, the twilight of the flesh, of this physical stuff that we are made of. So because we are small, and because our consciousness forgets its, or has forgotten its divinity, so then we can't bear the touch of the world. The universe, the forces of the universe, the things that are happening are too strong for our little self to bear. And when we get one of those strong blows or impressions, we cry out and we call it pain. But he says the secret is really that the indifference, we normally are in a state of more or less happy indifference, pain and joy, these are a triple disguise, a disguise in three forms. Triple means three, no? They're the clothing of the dancer, the blissful dancer in the ways. The divine is dancing in the universe, and he clothes his delight, his rapture, in these three disguises which withhold from us, they hide from us the body of God's bliss. But if we can become strong enough to bear the touch of the world, thy spirit's strength will make thee one with God. We'll be able to recover our unity with the divine. And then our agony, our intense suffering will turn to intense delight, to ecstasy, that touch which was too strong for us and was causing us so much pain. We shall experience it as intense delight. And that indifference will deepen into that calm of infinity which can bear and enjoy everything. No? And joy itself, delight, will laugh, nude, no longer covered up and disguised on the peaks, on the very highest peaks of the Absolute. So there's a chapter in the Life Divine called Delight of Existence. Number one, the problem. And you could say that these lines here are a summary of that chapter, or expressing it in a very... I think it's chapter 11. It's called Delight of Being, or Delight of Existence. And there are two chapters on it. One, the problem. And the conclusions that come in that chapter are wonderfully compressed and expressed in memorable poetry here. Bear, thou shalt find at last thy road to bliss. Bliss is the secret stuff of all that lives. Indifference, pain and joy, a triple disguise, attire of the rapturous dancer in the waves, withhold from thee the body of God's bliss. But thy spirit's strength shall make thee one with God, and then we will all be able to share in this delight. So this is one of Narad's answers. There are so many answers in this chapter to the problem of pain, but this is one that he addresses to us ordinary human beings. And he advises us to make of our daily way a pilgrimage. He comes not to the high world-maker's seat. He waits not for the outstretched hand of God to raise him out of his mortality. All he would make his own, leave nothing free, stretching his small self to cope with the infinite. Obstructing the gods' open ways, he makes his own estate of the earth's air and light. A monopolist of the world energy, he dominates the life of common men. His pain and others' pain he makes his means. On death and suffering he builds his throne. In the hurry and clangour of his acts of might, in a riot and excess of fame and shame, by his magnitudes of hate and violence, by the quaking of the world beneath his tread, he matches himself against the eternal's calm, and feels in himself the greatness of a god. Power is his image of celestial self. The Titan's heart is a sea of fire and force. He exults in the death of things and ruin and fall. He feeds his strength with his own and others' pain. In the world's pathos and passion he takes delight. His pride, his might call for the struggle and pang. He glories in the sufferings of the flesh and covers the stigmata with the Stoic's name. His eyes, blinded and visionless, stare at the sun. The seeker's sight, receding from his heart, can find no more the light of eternity. He sees the beyond as an emptiness void of soul, and takes his night for a dark infinite. His nature magnifies the unreal's blank, and sees in naught the sole reality. He would stamp his single figure on the world, obsess the world's rumours with his single name. His moments centre the vast universe. He sees his little self as very God. His little I has swallowed the whole world. His ego has stretched into infinity. His mind, a beat in original nothingness, ciphers his thought on a slate of hourless time. he builds on a mighty vacancy of soul, a huge philosophy of nothingness. In him Nirvana lives and speaks and acts, impossibly creating a universe. An eternal zero is his formless self, his spirit, the void, impersonal absolute. Take not that stride, O growing soul of man. Cast not thyself into that night of God. The soul suffering is not eternity's key, or ransom by sorrow, heaven's demand on life. O mortal, bear, but ask not for the stroke. Too soon will grief and anguish find thee out. Too enormous is that venture for thy will. Only in limits can man's strength be safe. Yet is infinity thy spirit's goal. Its bliss is there behind the world's face of tears. A power is in thee that thou knowest not. Thou art a vessel of the imprisoned spark. It seeks relief from time's envelopment, and while thou shut'st it in, the seal is pain. Bliss is the Godhead's crown, eternal, free, unburdened by life's blind mystery of pain. Pain is the signature of the ignorance, attesting the secret God denied by life. Until life finds him, pain can never end. Calm is self's victory, overcoming fate. Bear, thou shalt find at last thy road to bliss. Bliss is the secret stuff of all that lives. Even pain and grief are garbs of world delight. It hides behind thy sorrow and thy cry. Because thy strength is a part and not God's whole. Because, afflicted by the little self, thy consciousness forgets to be divine, as it walks in the vague penumbra of the flesh, and cannot bear the world's tremendous touch. Thou criest out and sayest that there is pain. Indifference, pain, and joy, a triple disguise, attire of the rapturous dancer in the ways, withhold from thee the body of God's bliss. Thy spirit's strength shall make thee one with God. Thy agony shall change to ecstasy. Indifference deepen into infinity's calm, and joy laugh nude on the peaks of the Absolute.